You got it.
Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me, my books and blogs on dismantling family court corruption, where you can also find the books that I have written. Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, followed by Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children, a bestseller, and Raised by These Wolves, Volume 2, Child Trafficking Through the Foster Care and Court Systems, which came out July 17th of 2024 as a bestseller. And please feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. I've got a brand new guest on. I'm very happy to have Tanja Partington on. She's got a background in reunification facilitator for prison inmates and their families. Also, extended learning for substitute teachers specializing in children with special needs. She's also a spokesperson for National Alliance for Drug Endangered Children. And she's a vital partner to community for children with learning in homes and schools. She also taught children to avoid dangerous situations and how to face danger and attempt escapes. She also has a very wide area of epilepsy regarding medical, behavioral, first aid, psychogenic, therapeutic, anti-seizure medications, cognitive behavioral therapy. She knows a lot about epilepsy, but she's not a doctor. And she has many certificates from the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. She works with parents, early childhood attachment stress and trauma, parents in child welfare system, and she's a parent resource, traumatic separation in child welfare and kinship care systems. Now, her story started in March of 2023 when CPS got involved through her second cousin, bringing himself and his newborn son to her home. The option was to allow him and his new son to live with her, or CPS would take the infant and put him in the system. However, today, she's been completely erased. And I totally welcome you, Tanja Partington, to this podcast. And I'm very sorry all this has happened to you. And walk us through what you have been through.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share the story in hopes that somebody else can benefit and help save their children. Some of the things I did, if I would have been the biological parent, could have saved him from being taken from my home.
Mm.
The mother immediately relinquished her rights, being that she is a former drug addict. She had 2 prior children, 2 different baby daddies.
Mhm.
They have custody of the children. This third one was born with such high amounts of cocaine in his system. I was there when he was born, so I saw the test results, not second guessing anything anyone told me here. I saw it.
Mhm.
The hospital was not to release that child to them. They did. They slipped through the cracks. They took this child home. Well, of course, they caught up with them, and that's when they showed up on my door.
Mhm.
She relinquished all her rights to the father, who's also a drug addict, but they didn't test him because the baby didn't come out of him, came out of her.
Mhm.
I let them move in, and you can imagine the horror and what my house was subjected to.
Oh.
And everybody's got a story. Some of the basic things that happened was within 2 weeks, he was shaking this poor little infant, just shaking him violently. My
Mm.
mom that lives with me caught it, took the baby away, said, "Where's the bottle?" And the kid, he went off on my mom. "I don't care if you effing give him ketchup," and walks out the door. The next time I catch it, and we tell the CPS worker this, he says, "Deal with it." One thing after another like this. So at this time, I'm taking 24/7 care of this child to avoid him getting abused because CPS isn't doing anything.
Jeez.
Then he has a seizure, his first seizure. Stops breathing. Out.
Mm.
My mom comes out of the room with him, says, "I think he stopped breathing." The
Oh.
father comes out of his room, grabs the baby, holds him up in the air, says, "I don't think he's breathing," tosses him back at my mom and goes back to his room.
Oh no.
I call, at this time, ambulance is coming through the door. We're getting everything done. He comes out. I'm like, we need to get him to the hospital. And they got him breathing again. He's like, no, he'll be fine. No. We argue for like 20, 30 minutes to get him to the hospital.
Oh,
At
no.
this point, the sheriff is calling everybody saying, we need this kid in the hospital. We need this done. We need that done. And it was just, you can imagine, just a big scene. We finally get him to the hospital. At that point, those are just a few things that happened. You can imagine the extensivity of it on a daily basis. So we file for guardianship. During this guardianship, the father agrees to it. Then he talks to the lawyer, and then a week later, he disagrees with it and says, no. I'm like, well, it's too late. I'm going forward with it. You ain't never here, and if you are, you're causing problems.
Right.
So he thinks I'm going to stop it, and I tell him no, and he takes off drunk. No license, no registration, no insurance, gets in a car accident. Drunk driving. Ends up in the hospital, almost died. Then he calls me wanting me to come get him and bring him his baby. And why am I forcing him to stay in the hospital? Okay, he broke his neck in 2 places, shattered his femur, and is unable to sit up by himself. And I'm forcing him to stay in the hospital. Okay, I'm pretty powerful. Gotcha. Roger, Dodger.
Oh, geez.
One thing after another with this kid. Okay, so let's move forward a little bit so I don't take up too much time. That just gives you a gist of what we were living with, okay?
Okay.
We're almost ready to finalize this guardianship. And he's mad because I wouldn't stop it. So he starts calling CPS saying that I am sexually abusing the child.
Oh.
I'm like, okay, well, we went through this because I had to go through all the procedures that CPS required because I told them that you were shaking the baby. We had to go through forensic testing. We had to do the whole 9 yards, which all they did is say, get it done. They didn't give me numbers or names or how to do it. I had to figure that out on my own. And I did. Everything was fine. Good to go. No abuse. No damage from the abuse. So keep that in mind that got done, because that's going to come back up later in the story.
Okay.
Okay. I should have missed that kid.
Oh.
He keeps calling CPS saying this. And he takes a neighbor that lives next door. And he takes this guy and he dummies up a Facebook. Because come to find out why he picked my neighbor, because he's the same height as him. And this gets interesting. Dummies up this account and starts sending threatening messages to himself, supposedly from this neighbor, along with a picture of his you-know-what that he took in my bathroom when he was drunk when he lived here, sending it to the baby mama's friend.
Isn't that like catfishing in a way?
In a way, yeah. Yeah. So he turns this in to CPS, that I am allowing the sexual molestation, that I am holding this 9, 10-month-old baby and allowing this neighbor to penetrate with his fingers this small child, is what they elaborated on this Photoshop photo that the police said this is not a real photo. The police said this is not even a real Facebook. They sat right here, well, next door with the neighbor online on his real account while he talked to the fake account. Live time right there. And they're telling CPS there's no way. This is dinging off in La Quinta. This isn't anywhere near there. That's where the baby father's mother lives, who did all this. Nobody wants to listen.
So you're saying his ex was doing a lot of this Facebook stuff?
No, his biological mother, the grandmother, stepped in and started doing all this. Yeah. she's a real winner too, but it continued to get worse. So we're dealing with fighting all that, petitioning the court for the MRIs, trying to figure out, because the seizures are getting worse. He has 3 different types. We have 7 different specialists for him because of all his developmental delays. I do daily therapy with him, and we're seeing huge progress. I mean, he had little claw hands. He's now opening them up and being able to pick things up, which he could not do before. He's nonverbal. So at this point, at 10 months old, he and I are communicating through sign language. Amazing. Amazing. I mean, he caught on so quickly with all his challenges. Just amazing little kid. So dealing with all that, getting it all done, he's over here on the side with CPS pulling all this crap. So he had 3 seizures back to back one morning, and I took him to the emergency, like I do every time. And I have to tell CPS every time I do it. So on the way in the ambulance, I text them and say, we're on our way again. Because CPS told me from the get-go, I have to keep them updated. Every medical document, every medical exam, test, everything, I am to report to them every time we go to emergency. And they want real time. They don't want me to do it a day later. So that's what I do. Always have. It's just natural. That's what I do. Along with my daily log I keep for them.
But they're not your parole officer.
No, they're not, but that's what they requested of me because they were supposedly investigating the parents. But apparently that wasn't the truth. It was me they were investigating, not the parents. So these 3 back-to-back seizures, he was on an IV, and this time the worker shows up. He said, and takes him from me. It's the last I saw of him. She's yelling at my sister to give him up because she's holding him. And she's like, you have to come in the room. The child is on a freaking IV. The child's IV line will not reach outside this room. But she would not come in, and she threatened to arrest my sister for being non-compliant.
Jeez.
It was just one thing after another with CPS. And the original testimony is where it comes back to it. On the court documents, it says that I never reported the shaking or the abuse. Although the documents from the test results are in there. And then when I questioned CPS about that, they told me, they said, you did not properly report it, therefore it's dismissed and doesn't count.
Oh boy.
Anyone ever heard of that? I reported it to the worker that brought me the child that was the current worker at the time. But they're telling me I was supposed to call the hotline or something. And he's saying, well, I came out to the house and talked to him. No, he didn't. He called me on the phone and told me to hand him the phone. But none of it mattered. That made no sense. So now the child is gone. They demanded I take everything. The baby bag, the car seat, his prescription medication, his bottle, everything. I was to leave him in the hospital like that with a t-shirt and the diaper he had on. They wouldn't let me leave him anything. And I even tried handing him at least his medication. Nothing. So I took it all to the CPS office and left it there for him. The next, I left him enough for 3 days, knowing court would be in 3 days. Everything he would need. After court, I did leave him more, but I found out a week later, it all got returned by mail unopened. I didn't want any of it, including his medication.
That's,
yeah, it was devastating.
Yeah.
I said, okay, what's this going to cost me while he's in your care until I can get him back? What's the price here? I don't want to go into debt. Let me pay you monthly. I want my kid back. Nothing. He said he's going to be granted a guardian ad litem for family. Now, what a joke.
Yeah.
I looked up his attorney. His attorney specializes in dog bites and bankruptcy and would not return any of my calls whatsoever.
So
I
how
was,
soon, I'm sorry, how soon did they give him a guardian ad litem?
he got one at about, they said they assigned him one the first court date, but I didn't actually hear of a name until the second court date about a month later.
Mm.
Yeah. So, let's see. Let me do with the court dates here, mark off some key points. What happened after that, because I don't want to leave too much out. I did obtain a lawyer right away, which was another joke and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Cost me $9,500. As you can kind of see behind me, my house is empty. I mean, I went bare minimum. I sold everything I owned to pay for this.
Mm.
She told me she would file for my parent de facto, which I filled out. She just had to file it, you know.
Now, what does that mean in case people don't know what that means?
Parent de facto is a one-page document that puts you in the place of a parent role. So if you've been providing that care as if you were a parent, that gives you that court status
Mm-hmm.
to be the parent. Yeah. And being I was the only one in this kid's life, and I was the temporary guardian at the time. So that was to be filed. To be.
Mm-hmm.
The first court date was a joke. All they wanted to know was about Indian heritage. I do understand the importance of that, but that's all it was about. My lawyer, of course, didn't show up. I didn't find it unusual because I just hired her the day before because the
Mm-hmm.
court date went so fast.
Mm-hmm.
But he really didn't do anything for it. Wanted visitation of some sort, obviously, and they said no. That it would harm the child to see me. So instead, the judge granted the bio mom and dad visitations.
That's terrible.
The ones that, he would come home and he'd have scratches all over him because they didn't know how to improperly do a seatbelt on the car seat and just rip them out. And, he'd come in the door screaming and crying and reach for me because he's like, please get these people away from me,
Mm.
So, yeah, it is devastating. So the first court date was pretty much a joke.
Mm-hmm.
The second court date, I was trying to ask my lawyer what's going on with his parent de facto. Am I in? Or she's like, oh yeah, I filed it. I go, well, I want my visitations.
Mm-hmm.
And so she asked. He said no. CPS says that they believe, without proof, that I was part of sexual abusing that child. I told them in an interview, I said that neighbor man is prepared to do whatever you say to prove it's not him. He is ready to strip down in front of the judge, a doctor, whatever you say, to show that it's not his what.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's got my cousin's shoes in my bathroom. It's my cousin. It's not the neighbor. And on top of that, the neighbor's Mexican.
Mm-hmm.
It makes no sense. It just makes no sense at all.
So they just made up a bunch of Facebook
Yeah.
identities.
Mm-hmm. And then they made up more that confirmed the first one, saying, oh, yeah. And CPS believed it. I said, you need to investigate this. That Photoshop picture, for one, that anybody with a half a mind knows it's Photoshopped. The police told you that they watched the man you're accusing go online talking to the supposed account that was supposedly his.
Mm-hmm.
And they pinged it to another town completely. I mean, come on. And they said, well, we can't afford it. We don't have resources to do that. Wait, but you can take this child from me on that pretense, but not prove it? It's up to me? Okay, well, I'm gonna go hire a PI and I will prove it wrong. And they did not like that answer. They're like, oh, well, you did this and this and this too. And I'm like, no, let's knock this out one at a time.
Mhm.
Well, the next thing I know, I'm getting a phone call that those charges were dismissed.
Hmm.
I said, yeah, because my PI proved them false. So they didn't want to bring him back to the judge because then I would get to bring mine back to the judge saying, hey, look, here's a court-approved, appointed private investigator saying that is fake. And I sent them all of the old phones that the father left here. Guess where they got tracked back to? So they did away with all that.
Oh.
And they said that they want to reunite this child with this felon drug addict parent instead. That is their plan. And they want me to support it. I'm like, you don't think I did that for 10 months in my home?
Mhm. Oh my gosh.
And then they see in court in the second court date, they said, well, we want a continuance because her guardianship needs to be removed first. And I go, wait, I'm a temporary guardianship, and the finalization of my guardianship was taken off calendar until this case was over. They wanted that completely dismissed off the records. And I go, no, I took it off calendar. It's not going to happen until this is over.
Mhm.
But the judge still granted them the continuance. Well, then I get a call saying that from my lawyer saying, well, I'm not representing you anymore. I'm like, what do you mean you're not representing me anymore? She goes, you didn't show up to court for your guardianship. I'm like, that was taken off calendar. Well, no, it wasn't. Yes, it was. Somehow got put back on calendar without my knowledge, a different day to what I had down in the first place that I canceled. And so it was dismissed without prejudice. And I cannot refile. Dismissed without prejudice means you can refile. I could not refile because I didn't have him in my custody. Tell me that wasn't them setting all that up.
Mhm.
So I go to court and I try fighting all this to come to find out that the lawyer didn't follow up with my parent de facto. And she's telling me that because of that court date that I let the ball drop, it's my fault. I'm not parent de facto. I call 3 other lawyers that deal with the juvenile division in there with foster care. They all 3 tell me the same thing. If you have parent de facto status, that guardianship don't matter because it's in a higher court. It's family, the juvenile is higher up than the probate court. So it wouldn't matter. So I go and I investigate this parent de facto.
Mhm.
She gave it to him, and as he stamped it, she never followed up. It never went anywhere. So I'm out. And she tells me, don't even bother coming to court, the 3rd court case. And then and my mom goes, because she was legal guardian as well as me. She
Mhm.
goes, she has a different lawyer. And my lawyer goes, well, why isn't she here? Where is she? Of course, I turn all this into state board. I lose there too.
Mm.
There's the most important thing out of this whole thing. You can, barely skimming the surface of this story of all the corruption, of what these people are going to do to you when they take your children.
Mhm.
The best thing you can do is educate yourself. Right after they took Caden, here's a good point you guys need to think about to save your child. Educate yourself. They're going to tell you that they want this and this and this. Do not wait for them to tell you how to do it. You find out how to do it yourself. Ask them, are you court approved? Whoever you call, whatever class you take, most of these classes are court approved and free online. Find them, do them, because when you go to court the next time, that's gonna speak volume to the judge that you moved forward without their help, that you were motivated and you figured it out without them. If you have to wait on them to get something done, you ain't gonna win. Your chances
Right.
are less and less.
Very true.
The one place that I gained a lot of knowledge and insight in that what people need to realize is that social workers through child protective agencies are taught not to care. They will actually be in trouble for caring for a child. They are taught to remove a caseworker consistently on a regular basis so they don't get attached to a child. If you take some of the classes I did online that they offer social workers and their supervisors, it states in there that you cannot submit your employees to medical abuse by getting attached to a child. How does that sound? Does that sound like that's in the best interest of a child to you?
No.
Don't subject your employees to mental anguish through a child situation.
That's messed up.
Yeah, that's what these classes will teach you. They will teach you what perception they are coming at you from. And that will give you the information you need to know to come back at them and contradict what they're doing.
Mhm.
They're going to continue moving workers on you. They're going to continue twisting their words. They're going to continue having a witness in the room when they interview you, yet you're not allowed. You're not allowed to have a recorder or anything like that. But let me tell you this, you are allowed a pen and a paper and you take notes.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if it's something really important, you tell them here, initial right there. I want to make sure you said that right. Is that what you said? You initial it. And if they don't initial it, stop the interview.
Mhm.
Well, you're obviously lying. You have that right. And if you do not demand your civil rights where they're being infringed upon, they are going to take you for one wild ride and you ain't going to see your kids again.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's the war is real. And we can't count, even in 2 Timothy in chapter 3, it talks about how, people are going to not find favor in the elderly and in the children, and they are going to abuse them and they're going to torture them. And people like us are going to have to endure the suffering. And that's what's happening. And we need to wise up and start learning what they're teaching people. Their social workers are just people like we are,
Mhm.
just trying to do their job. But their job is harsh. I wouldn't do that job. Their moral values are gone.
Right. And most of them, wouldn't you say, are even just caseworkers out of either high school or college,
Mhm.
and they wouldn't have any real empathy themselves because they don't even have kids themselves.
Exactly.
Or, some of these caseworkers are in it for maybe a year and then they get out because they can't stand it.
They can't stomach what they're doing. If you look up a lot of advocates against CPS, you'll notice most of them are prior CPS workers. The
Mhm.
ones that actually had heart and moral value got out of the business. They knew it wasn't okay.
Right. Right.
Separation attachment will linger in a child's life. Even though Caden was only 10 months old when he was
Mhm.
taken, he's going to have attachment disorder along with everything else he has. And he's not even going to know why. And on top of that, he's now labeled that he was sexually abused. Oh, and let me
Oh,
tell you, his family's spreading that all over town, and it's not gone unheard. I'm the latest in town that's done this to him. And do you know how hard that is growing up with? I was. It was hard when people knew. But here's a child that's already challenged because of drugs
mhm, mhm.
that has to live with that too. Oh, I forgot a key point. The second time in court, I was told that I was lying and there was no medical problems with him. And I said, well, you obviously ain't watching him. He's got 3 types of seizures, this one, this one, and this one. They took him off all his medications, said, well, we haven't seen any seizures. I go, well, then you don't know what you're looking for. All the testing. Okay, so first of all, supposedly I didn't report any abuse, but then he's saying he came and talked to him about the abuse I reported. Then they're showing the documents where I had to have him tested per their request because of abuse, but I never reported it. you know, those little things matter. They twist them up in the paperwork that none of that happened. And now they're saying that I'm crazy and that I made it all up. Now here's a stack of documents, probably 3 inches thick, of medical documentation from the doctors. But I'm making it up. So about 2 weeks into his stay, I heard through the grapevine that he had another seizure. And so they doubled up on his meds, which broke my heart because the meds he was on, being at that age, the FDA and stuff do not like to give anybody under the age of 2 epilepsy medication. There's too many side effects. So with the doctor we had, I would call him at home. He gave me his home number. That's how serious this little boy was hurt. And, you know, we had to go back and forth with the effects and the challenges and what he was going through to get this medication to properly work at just enough, not too much, not too little. But that was all a lie. And then they just doubled up that dose on him, and now he's just a little walking zombie.
Oh.
And there's nothing wrong with him. Okay, that's why I had 7 specialists. That's why I have all this documentation of his progress, where he was and where he's come from, where he's been, and what he's doing. All lies. All because the father decided that he wanted to run off to Alabama because he got in that car accident, and it was a felony charge for drunk driving. So he wanted to take his son and take off to Alabama with his stepmom.
Can you imagine?
Which I kind of left that part of the story out. When after that accident, he came home from the hospital. I'm sorry, I forgot this part. This was kind of crucial. He checked himself out of the hospital. Showed up here in the middle of the night. I told him, you ain't coming in here. You can go, you know, go to the back room or something. So he did. I took his son the next day to a Halloween event because it was already planned. Sorry, dude, you can't go, but I already paid for your kid, and I'm taking him by. And then on the way back, I find out that he's trying to escape to Alabama to get away from these felony charges because he hit a county vehicle.
Oh, whoa.
So yeah, he's in big trouble. And it was 2 vehicles because the boss of the first county vehicle, was following him. So not only did he hit the county vehicle, but the county vehicle's boss was behind him watching the plate.
It can't get
So
any
he's in
better
trouble.
than that. Jeez.
Yeah. So I get a phone call. My sister's like, your house is blowing up. I'm like, what? Goes, well, you've got him there. You got a bunch of people there on his side of the family from Alabama and all over. I'm like, why are they all there? Well, because they're gonna beat you up and take the child. I'm like, they're gonna do what? What is going on? So yeah, I don't think so. So then I had an APB out on me for child abduction because I didn't come home. No, I'm good. I got court Monday, and we'll see what the judge says about this. Bye. I ain't no. Why would I go home to subject myself to a beating? Let the little boy that thinks I am everything to him witness that, and then be thrown in a truck and taken all the way to Alabama to God knows what. Why would I do that to him? No, I'm good. No, we'll go to court, see what the judge says. And of course, the judge granted me the temporary. So his stepmom was livid. Oh, she was so mad. But she had to get set into a few things. She thought that she'd been sending him all this money every month, almost like $800 to $1,000 every month for his son. I never saw any of that. He was getting $900 a month from welfare and like $400 in food stamps every month. I never saw any of that. And neither did the baby. That was all right up his nose with his cocaine habit. This house never got a dime from him. So she's mad at me, and they're over here while I'm not here trying to strip my house of everything because they think they bought it all. Take whatever you want, honey. I don't care. I got the kid.
Mhm.
I don't care. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping around there a little bit. I'm sorry.
Well, this happens. Everyone's case is multifaceted and, even everyone's case is convoluted too, so I get
Um,
it.
and he couldn't have screen time.
Mm.
I gave him the documents and everything that he cannot watch a cell phone, a TV. He can't have flashing lights. He
Right.
can't have those things. They didn't listen. There's so many, he was under such a great deal of care. The interaction that Caden had was above and beyond anything I'd ever given a child before. I mean, it really, literally was 24/7. The doctors and I talked about it all the time. He
Mm.
slept with me because we couldn't get to the bottom of his epilepsy.
Mhm.
Um, it might not have even been epilepsy. We were getting to the point where, okay, these seizures might not be due to epilepsy, which runs in the mother's side of the family because he had 3 different types. So we were starting to pinpoint the idea that this might be a symptom of a bigger problem. So let's go in that direction. But they took him before we could get more testing done on that. But the doctors told me what we did is we set up my bed like a huge playpen, those sides.
Mhm.
Okay, so we had those, and then he always would cuddle with me, and then I put his wakey toy on the other side of him because if he even nudged, it would go off and wake me up,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that's how he had to sleep.
Oh.
And he really had 24/7 care. We were in the middle of getting him the little foot monitor because he was finally big enough to wear it.
Mhm.
So we would know that because the doctors want him in his own crib. And he was sleeping in his own crib beside my bed until the seizures started happening.
Mhm.
Uh, He's, I told the CPS worker, I go, I know what you're going to do to him, and it's horrible.
Mm.
I said, but I know that 10 months I had that little boy, that he has confidence, he has persistence, he has bravery, and he knows what real love is. And I pray that that's what stays with him as you torture him and through this long suffering that you're going to put him through right now. I know better. I know what they're going to do.
Mhm.
I've seen it too many times. I've had too many classes. I've seen too many children go through the system. And this system in particularly,
Mhm.
about 2 months ago, a 3-year-old was beaten to death. 3-year-old beaten to death. Last May, they started a lawsuit that's active right now, here today. Sit down, folks. You're not going to like this. 6,000 children for sexual abuse in this same San Bernardino County CPS, where this little boy of mine is, for sexual abuse. Why? Public knowledge. You can go online and read it, but I'll give you the quick rundown. They didn't do background checks and placed all these kids with known pedophiles,
Ah.
registered sex offenders. But yeah, you can look it up. It's all public knowledge. 6,000 between the ages of 18 months and 17 years old. 6,000 children. And I'm supposed to be okay with him being in this system. And there's nothing I can do about it. The courts won't talk to me. I filed every paper after I lost my lawyer. I filed the JV 180s asking for the reversal, everything I could think of to try and get the judge to look at the paperwork and say, look, this is what's happening. Will you just read one page of it? Anything to look at what they're doing. When I
Mhm.
got home the very next morning, that paperwork was back in the mailbox.
Ah.
And all it said was denied. And then a week later, the other things I had filed for him to know more about Caden, all returned unmarked.
Oh.
Paperwork is something I am good at.
Oh,
I
yes.
have done my research. I have filed. Getting the judges to read it and somebody actually enforcing what they claim the law is a whole nother story, folks.
Right, right. People don't realize that. They make it up as they go along.
Many people in this agency, once they do get their children and the judge says, okay, you can have your children, you go call the sheriff's department because you're going to need them to find out the address of where this foster care is to make them release your children. And make sure that judge is actually signed the paper, not a stamp signature, because they're not going to, CPS isn't going to release them to you. I've seen it happen too many times. The paperwork, when the judge says you can have your children back in California, no stamp signature, make them sign it, take the sheriff, go to that house, pick up your children. They'll put it off for months. I know one gal waited 7 years fighting through court to get her kids back.
How terrible.
The judge told her she could have her kids back. CPS put it on hold and did everything in the book for 7 years to keep her children from her.
All for the money. I found what you were talking about. ABC 7 Los Angeles, San Bernardino County Child Services sued on behalf of 5,800 foster children, but it says this was May 31st, 2023. The agency charged with caring for and protecting children is being sued on behalf of nearly 6,000 foster children in its care.
If you read the Trellis Law Review, you'll see a lot more detail on it too. Doesn't that break your heart? But they're doing a better job with these kids than we are. Caden had the best home ever.
Yes.
And he's been in the system now for 10 months. He was 10 months old when they took him. I haven't seen or talked to him since.
So you don't know what home he's in or with what foster parent he's with?
Nope. All I know is hearsay. What you hear around town, that goes along with me being a, abuser.
Do you have to get yourself cleared of that?
They won't let me. I have tried. They dismissed all the charges. And I said, well, I want that in writing. I want that off my record. And they said, well, you're not on the case anymore. We don't have to talk to you. And I go, well, I want something in writing that it's not on my file anymore.
Right.
And they're like, no, you're not on the case. We don't have to do that. Oh, I go to the courts. Oh, no, we can't do that. CPS has to do that. So you get the little red and round thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know right now how I'm going to get that off my record or if I even can, because nobody will talk to me. But people do your research, especially in California. Take those classes. Find out these people that are keeping your children. Learn what they're being taught so that you have some ammunition to get your kids back. And I don't want to sit here with another sad story because everybody's got one. I really, really hope that this helps somebody get their kids home. I don't want him being taken to go in vain. This has got to help save somebody. I mean, with Connie, she got Congress to admit, after 2 or 3 hours the other day, or maybe last month, that the congressman finally admitted that it's too damaged a system to repair. I'm like, yes, go Connie. But now where do you go from there? But that's an excellent step.
Yeah, it says deemed too broken to fix, San Bernardino Child Services.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
So, but is it broken because it's making so much money?
Well, it's broken in the best interest of the children.
Right.
Is where it's broken, yeah. And they're going to lose a lot of foster parents in the next 6 months. I don't know if you're aware of that part.
No.
The homeowner and renters insurance has this big to-do going on. You know it now? Sound familiar? Yeah. And so they're not going to be wanting to insure people that have foster kids.
No kidding.
Yeah. So if you have if you're a foster parent, you're either going to have to pay a lot more money for insurance through somebody else, or you're going to have to not be a foster parent anymore.
That might stop a lot of the corruption.
No, we could only hope, My mom even told them when they took Kate, and they said, well, if you really believe that in my daughter, I'm going to go rent another place and I'll take him over there and nobody will see us. we'll go live somewhere else until you figure this out. And my mom did. She jumped up, she rented another place, said, here we are. CPS said, yeah, we've been there. We don't think it's okay. They never even came out. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, nice place, all remodeled. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
They never even showed up.
Yeah, and they do one-sided interviews. I've been a victim of that.
Yeah. It's so sad. And it's like, if we all come together and not just share our story for emotional support, but hit the key points that might prevent anybody watching this from losing their kids,
Mm-hmm.
the whole point. That's the whole point right there. Keep your babies home. Get your babies back home. Because, and on a personal view, if I were able to, I'd go move to another county. I'd go move to another state. I'd get out from here because they're always going to be on you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah,
I'd go,
because they had you calling every time you took them to the hospital.
yeah. I had to text her every time. I had to submit every medical record. And I did. And then they told me that I never did.
Yeah.
But yet they were in the court records. How'd they get those? Oh, I guess the dad must have done it. Although he never took him to the doctor, I did all that.
So
And
they,
then they demanded that he turn in the birth certificate. And I'm like telling CPS, well, he never bought that. I have that. And he's like, well, I don't have a birth certificate. Why would I have one of those? And I'm like, he doesn't even know I have one. Here's a man that they want to raise this child.
mm-hmm.
Here's a man that comes into my home in the middle of the night, goes into my room where the child is, slams his hands together as loud as he can to startle him. Goes, oh, okay, he's all right, and walks out of my room.
Oh my God.
Here's a man that walks by through my house on a regular basis, ignoring this child. This child will be like, and he
Oh,
ignores him, doesn't even look at him. And if he does, he goes, man, you're ugly.
oh,
Oh, you got a big forehead. Don't look at me like that. You look like your mother. Just negative, negative, negative. And if I say, hey, look, there's your dad, he would look at me and goes, don't you push him on me.
ooh.
But this is a man that CPS wants to reunification with this child for him. I wished him the best of luck. I said, go for it. I said, I'll try for 10 months. You can do better. Hats off to you. Because, maybe it's me being a family member that couldn't do it, but I couldn't do it. He shows up day one in court and he has I want to say 8 or 9 of those little monthly chips that you're sober.
Mm.
Okay, well, a month ago you were just in a car accident for DUI.
Right.
Okay, did you hit the jackpot at a yard sale? Because I'm not
Yeah.
buying it.
Right. Oh my good. So this little boy
See,
is with your son right now, or you don't know that for sure?
I don't know where this little boy is. The father is my cousin that was abandoned by my first cousin. Because the father of the baby is my second cousin.
Mm-hmm.
His mother, my first cousin, abandoned him for drugs when he was little. So when he got a little bit older, I met him and his brother because at first I didn't know him. I was in a different state. And then I came to meet them and they came to live with me because they were living on the streets. I mean, they're like, 12, 13 years old, So I became like a mom figure to them. And then they would take off once in a while, go live with another family member, but they always seemed to come back to my house. His older brother never did. His older brother made it in life, very successful, great kid,
Mm-hmm.
wonderful guy. But yeah, his mom did him wrong, and she's got quite the record. She's got her little felonies mostly consist of stabbing people, embezzlement, fraud, and we're not talking a little fraud. We're not talking thousands of dollars here. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. She's done prison time for
Wow.
stealing RVs and stuff. And it's very extensive. And
Mm.
that's where the knowledge came from to do all this big stuff.
So you would probably tell a parent first off, get a private investigator.
Definitely. Definitely. Because it makes sure they're court approved. I paid about $2,000 for mine. And you'd be surprised how much stuff that CPS will just vanish once they find out that you're going to get a PI on it. Stuff's going to disappear because they don't like to be told they're wrong. They'll never admit they're wrong.
because they
And
want money.
do not trust CPS to turn in anything. You go get that statement form. I think it might be a 290, I think it might be in the California courts, but it's like a JV 290, 295. Look it up to make sure it's a statement of facts. You put your information on that with your case number. You file it in the clerk's office and get it to the judge. CPS ain't going to do it for you. They're never going to see anything you have. You have to be responsible for that part.
Right. I always, when I would submit motions or whatever, I would get it time stamped and then I would walk it to the judge's chambers and hand it to his secretary. Then she would give me a receipt saying that, yes, they received it.
Yes. Yes. That's what you need.
Yes.
My courthouse, unfortunately, won't allow that. But I wanted to. Other courthouses do allow that, but the one I was in, she wouldn't let me back there,
Well,
which
then,
I think is illegal. I think they're not.
right.
Yeah.
The clerk shouldn't interfere. The clerk could even
No, they
walk with
shouldn't.
you to the
That,
judge's chambers and say, this is what we're doing and here it is. And
yeah,
can we have a receipt? I
yeah.
think these clerks are more of a problem as well as the attorneys, and they're working in tandem with CPS.
That is so apparent because look at the guardian case I had, the guardianship case I had that was taken off calendar. And then all of a sudden on calendar for a different date. No. And then it shows on record that it was never taken off calendar and it was never the other date when I have documents showing it was that other date that I took it off calendar. That is straight up corruption.
Mm.
They wanted me not to be that legal guardian. And my lawyer knew that. Krista Haynes, I don't care who knows it. She is corruption.
Mhm.
She knew it. She messed up my parent de facto. All this was on purpose. This was all planned out by them to take that little boy
Mm.
and make him suffer for no reason at all, other than the dad kept blowing up their phones. And I know the social worker because she got restraining orders on her for this. She don't like to hear it. And she will get in your ear and just, no, 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 leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone. She got tired of hearing from him.
Hmm.
Online, that's why she took him. She won't hear anymore from dad.
Problem solved.
Yep.
Oh,
And they're taught not to care. Best interest of the child, right?
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know about you all, but I grew up that whoever stirs the pot, and you know what kind of pot I mean, I won't say it, ought
Should
to
be
be,
forced to lick the spoon.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. That's exactly what I believe.
That's what I told the co-parent counselor. I said, whoever stirs the shit pot should be forced to lick the spoon.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely correct. I mean, I don't see any way around it. I'm going to keep praying and, you know, I know God's going to take care of it. God's
Mm-hmm.
going to take care of him for me because I believe. And, he told me he's going to take care of him for me. The world is evil. God cannot stop the evil
Mm-hmm.
from running amok in this world, but he can get us through it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth. It's not that, why is God letting this happen? That should never be a question.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
It's that God's going to help get us through it so we can get home someday. And I know he's going to get Caden through this.
I agree. Oh, is there any other advice that you could give a parent if, some parents say, well, don't let CPS in.
I agree. Wholeheartedly. I had a CPS worker when my kids were young attempt to get in my house. I opened my door and I got out front. I went open my door, didn't even let her look in. She
Mm-hmm.
came by about 4 or 5 times. She came by with her boss a couple times, and she would hand me paperwork, and I would look at it and go, nope. And I hand it back to her. She's, that's the paperwork. You have to let me in. I go, no,
Yeah,
it's
where's
not
your warrant?
signed.
Right, and where's your warrant?
Yeah. And she didn't have one. And then she brought me the paper with a judge signed on CPS paperwork, not court paperwork, with a judge stamp signature. I'm like, nope, know your rights. You don't let them in your house.
Mhm,
Realize they will go to the school if your child is school age, and you really can't stop the school. They're going to cooperate.
mhm.
But no, you can change schools or homeschool.
True, very true, and I don't think CPS should be allowed to take the child out of their class and go into a room by themselves without a chaperone,
Right?
you
Yeah,
know?
I agree. I agree. You know, they're the only agency that has the right to interview and interrogate you without a lawyer present. They're the only one. And they have the right to not obey any civil right at all when it comes to a minor. They subject them, think about it, they subject them to how many medical exams to prove they were or weren't sexually molested. We know those tests are pretty much abusive in their own form.
Mhm.
They have the right to do that without seeking a judge, without proving any evidence that it should be done. And yeah, just like they have all these rights, like you say, not having anyone present is a major one.
Right, because I even called the school and I said, "Well, hey, when CPS comes through the door, I know you let them have a room, but do you have a chaperone in there?" "Oh, no, that's not our protocol."
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not the law. Isn't that horrible?
Yeah.
It's devastating. And you can even, I mean, a lot of places, unless you know somebody in the office of the school, they're not even going to bother tell you they're there. You'll never even know CPS was at the school talking to the child unless your child tells you.
Right, right.
And it's sad. I know one lady that's in turmoil right now with her daughter, and I'm like, you need to prep her. You need to tell her what her civil rights are
Mhm.
at only 12 years old. And you need to help her have the strength to stand up to it against grown adults that are going to try and squash her.
Oh,
It's not easy, but she's going to have to do it or they're going to take her. Because the grandmother is raising her because her mother died of a drug overdose,
oh,
which
gee.
was actually a murder that was covered up. But now the grandmother has her and has been raising her, and CPS is all over that. This girl hasn't made. She's got all the love in the world.
Mm.
She's going to a great school for artists. I mean, she got it good. But that doesn't mean CPS can leave her alone.
Right, right. And even when these foster children grow up, they can't even have lives of their own because CPS is haunting them all the time. That's very
Stigma. They can't even go to a college without writing down that they were a foster kid because it matters on the money end.
Mhm, mhm.
How is that fair? And you know, I asked the counselors about that one time, and they're like, well, you know, until they're 24, we have to know what the parents' financial status is.
Oh, yeah, it's all about the money. Kids for
It's like,
cash.
you know, a lot of times people say, well, you know, I ran away when I was 16, so I don't know. And then you don't inquire and it's fine. So no, I'm going to call hogwash on that.
Mhm.
Just if you can avoid, like you were saying, not letting them into your home, don't. If they really have a signed warrant to get in your home, a key component is there'll be a police officer there with it.
Mhm,
If
mhm.
there's not, you don't even have to answer your door.
Yeah, I wish
Look
I
out the
never
window, see them, don't open it, don't answer them.
well, my first mistake was the, caseworker that had been there for 10 years, so that gives you a clue that she enjoys what she does, right? And she called my house and said, "Can I come over at 3 p.m.?" And other people I worked with said, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I mean, you don't have anything to hide. You have a, decent house. I mean, just show them there's food in the fridge. It's all they're going to look for. And, just
Right.
so, I didn't think this was malignant at the time, but I should have called my lawyer. I should have said, wait a minute, you go call my lawyer. I'm going to call my lawyer and you can talk to her too. So we'll discuss this at another time. Click. That's what I should have done.
But even though we should have done that,
Should have
think of
done.
how they spoke to you.
Oh,
Think of
yes.
how they led you that way. I mean, they are taught in those classes to make you feel so comfortable with them that they are on your side that you don't
Mhm.
even second guess it. You don't even second doubt it. You're like, oh, this is fine. You'll be like, do, it's over. Like you were thinking. They are trained to make you think that way.
Well, with the first caseworker, I reported her to the governor of what happened,
Nice.
how this all happened, and the transition from my career to losing it because of these people. And
Right.
so the governor's office rattled the cages down there. So then like a week later or so, 2 weeks later, I called and I talked to the head of the caseworkers. And I said, hey, what happened to, this caseworker? And he said, well, we removed her from the field because she's not fit to be around people. I said, so in other words, you gave her a desk job and you promoted her, right? Because that's
Yeah.
exactly what she said in the courtroom.
Yeah.
She was promoted. She was sitting up here like this in the witness,
Oh my gosh.
and she said she's telling the judge, "Yes, I was promoted." And I'm like going, "Oh no, you
Like
weren't."
that little 12-year-old twitch going on,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah, just like that. And I just thought,
Oh
"Oh
my
my
gosh.
God." So then, once I was cleared of that emotional abuse charge I had a hearing on April 15th, and then I was cleared June. So this is how long this takes. June 5th, we'll say, right? Then by
Mhm.
June 9th, I get a call from a secondary caseworker who is very, I don't know, what do you want to say, abrasive on the phone, saying, "You're being indicated again on emotional abuse charges."
What?
So, yeah, and I said, "Talk to my lawyer." Click, and it's too bad, it's too bad we have these cell phones that we can't slam them down, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like in the
Yeah,
good old days, right? So
right.
then, my lawyer called me and said, "Yeah, they're targeting you." I have it in writing. The lawyer sending me a letter that you've been a
My
target.
gosh.
And so, of course, we had to go get that cleared, with a CPS judge. So I've been exonerated of these, but this is how they treat people.
And
To
how did you get through all this? I mean, you try to play nice, and
mm,
you try to jump through their hoops, and you try to do this. At what point do you stop? I mean, it's like you even if you stop after the first call, it's, like, too late. I mean, how do you know? That's the hard part for people.
right. I know that when my kids were sequestered with the corrupt judge and the corrupt opposing attorney who worked together in the DA's department for years, we were all left alone in the courtroom, and I passed this caseworker, in between the pews, and I said, "You're a liar." I mean, I just said it in my normal tone. I didn't whisper it. I didn't,
Yeah.
and she yells, "What, Marianne?" And then I said, "I don't know. I can't remember." And I just went and sat down because they were all calling me crazy, right? So
Yeah.
how do I know what I said? I suddenly forgot.
We're all crazy according to them.
Yeah, right,
We
right,
we all don't know how to love and take care of a child according to them.
right. It's all
It
about the
just
money.
it is. I mean, you'll notice a lot of things, they always talk about the trafficking of children, and a lot of people, especially back east, I'm starting to notice, and you probably see it more than I do,
Mhm.
that a lot of people have missing children, especially missing from school or what have you, and
Mhm.
they're like, "Did you check CPS?" I'm like, "Is that really a thing? I haven't really looked into it yet, but is that really happening?"
I think it's happening, and I know this. I mean, I'm not, an authority on that, but every time I walk out of a store, whatever, there's a big poster with a bunch of missing children,
Yeah.
missing, and it's like, I didn't notice that poster there before. Go into another, convenience store, there's another poster. Okay, so what is going on?
I noticed that some of them are actually, their abductors are actually their parents.
Mhm.
And I'm like, do I cheer them on? Are they saving their child?
Mhm.
But sometimes I'm starting to hear other stories that I bet you CPS took them, they're trafficking them because, just like the prison systems, they hide their inmates. And I wouldn't put it past CPS to be hiding children.
Yeah, at this point, I wouldn't either, and, so I'm so glad you came on this podcast to inform other people about your situation, which is a lot of other people's situation.
Well, I just hope that this isn't a waste of time, and I'm just
Oh, no, it's not.
praying that somebody takes something I said and use it to save a child. That's all I'm asking for.
Mhm.
Somebody go save a child with this information. If it helps anybody, that's all I ask.
I think, yeah, you've been most helpful. How can people reach you if they have a question, or do you want them to come through me?
I have my Gmail. You can post it down below if you want.
Okay, I will
Not
do
a
that.
problem there. It's one, T as in Tom, A as in Apple, N as in Nancy, J as in John, A as in Apple at gmail.com. And I am in Southern California. Recognize that state by state things are a little bit different,
Mhm.
but I'm happy to share, the forms and help with advocate on how to fill out some of these forms. Some of these forms, um, I can help you with what the judge is actually looking for. I got some help myself through advocates, which is an excellent organization. They actually have real lawyers help you for free.
Wow.
And I learned a lot through them on like the daily life of Caden. That's what they wanted to see. And they helped me put it all together. So I'm happy to share that knowledge with others.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No,
Thank
Tanya,
you.
thank you. Don't jump off, okay?
Okay.
Okay, Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe, Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't even know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. And I totally thank you, Tanya, for coming on, sharing your story, and speaking out to help others.
It does.
It
Save
will.
the children.
Mm-hmm.
That's all
Thank you.
God wants. Save the children.
Definitely. Thank you.